John Carter stared at the holographic blueprint floating above his desk. The blue light from the display cast shadows across his tired face. He ran his fingers through his messy brown hair and sighed. This design broke at least 6 different Galactic Confederation guidelines. But it would work. He knew it would work. The door to his small office slid open with a soft hiss. John quickly tapped a button, and the blueprint vanished. Working late again, Carter. Admiral Lisa Moore stood in the doorway, her gray uniform perfectly pressed despite the late hour. Just finishing some calculations. Admiral, John replied, trying to look busy with standard work. Admiral Moore stepped inside and closed the door behind her. You can drop the act. I know what you've been doing with your free time. John's stomach tightened. Creating unsanctioned ship designs was grounds for dismissal from the United Earth Space Navy's Research and Development Division. Instead of anger, a small smile appeared on the Admiral's face. Your colleagues think you're crazy, but I've seen your designs. They're brilliant. Thank you, Mom, John said, surprised by the compliment. Admiral Moore's smile faded. The Confederation sent new restrictions today. After our skirmish with the Voraxians at the outer colonies, they're limiting our ships even further. John's shoulders slumped. Earth had only been part of the Galactic Confederation for 30 years. In that time, the older alien species had placed more and more limits on human military technology. They claimed it was for peaceful integration, but everyone knew the truth. They were afraid of how quickly humans adapted and improved. Show me what you were working on, Admiral Moore said. John hesitated, then tapped the button. The blueprint reappeared, showing a ship unlike any in the Earth fleet. It was sleek, with sections that could separate and rejoin. It's designed to follow their rules while finding ways around them, John explained. They say we can't have ships longer than 500 meters, so this one is exactly 499. They limit our weapons, so I've added civilian mining lasers that can be linked together. Admiral Moore walked around the hologram, studying it from all angles. And these sections, they detach. Yes, the rules say a warship can't exceed certain specifications, but they don't say anything about a warship that can split into 5 smaller ships that work together. The Admiral's eyes gleamed in the blue light. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip, placing it on John's desk. This contains classified research from Dr. Maria Gonzalez. She's developed a new drive system that the Confederation doesn't know about yet, something that could change everything. John picked up the chip, his heart racing. Why are you giving me this? Admiral Moore leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Because I'm authorizing you to build this ship off the books. Find me a loophole in their rules, Carter. Show them what humans can really do. But the resources, the personnel, leave that to me. I have a small shipyard outside the Jupiter orbit that doesn't appear on official records. And I know just the crew who would be willing to test something like this. John couldn't believe what he was hearing. This is a huge risk, Admiral. If the Confederation finds out, the Voraxians are pushing at our borders. The Arachnids are demanding we reduce our fleet by another 20%. We need something they don't expect. She tapped the hologram. We need this. For the first time in months, John felt hope rising in his chest. What should I call it? Admiral Moore looked at the blueprint one last time before turning to leave. U.S. Maverick. Because that's what we need to be right now. The door closed behind her, leaving John alone with his blueprint and the data chip. He inserted the chip into his computer and began reading about Dr. Gonzalez's gravitational fold drive. His eyes widened as he understood what it could do. 6 months later, deep in the shipyards of Jupiter's shadow, the U.S. Maverick took shape, a warship that followed all the rules, technically. A warship that would soon change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The U.S. Maverick floated in the darkness of space, its silver hull reflecting the distant stars. Captain Daniel Wright stood on the bridge, arms crossed behind his back, watching as the Confederation inspectors moved through his ship. They scanned every corner, checked every system, and frowned at every unusual design choice. "This ship barely meets our size requirements," said the tall, blue-skinned Neptunian inspector. He tapped on his datapad with long fingers. 499.8 meters. "Cutting it rather close, aren't you?" "We wanted to use every bit of space allowed," Captain Wright replied with a polite smile. The team of 3 alien inspectors continued their tour. The human crew watched nervously as they examined the ship's weapon systems. 39 missile tubes, noted the arachnid inspector, her multiple eyes blinking in sequence. One less than the maximum. "We believe in efficiency, not excess," said Maria Gonzalez, the ship's chief engineer. She stood proudly beside her engines, watching carefully as the inspectors examined them. The third inspector, a reptilian Varaxian, pointed at the large arrays mounted on the ship's sides. "These are not standard weapons. Those are mining lasers," Maria explained. "For resource-gathering missions, they're civilian-grade equipment, not military weapons." The Varaxian's forked tongue flicked out in suspicion. "They appear to be linked in an unusual configuration." Maria shrugged. "More efficient that way. Saves power." The inspectors didn't need to know that when synchronized, these civilian lasers could match military-grade weapons in power. The regulations didn't forbid it. After 4 hours of inspection, the aliens gathered on the bridge. The Neptunian looked unhappy. "Your ship has many unusual features, Captain Wright, but we cannot find any direct violations of Confederation regulations." He handed over a small crystal cube that glowed green. "Your ship is approved for space travel." Once the inspectors left, the bridge crew let out a collective sigh of relief. "That was close," said First Officer Samantha Lewis, a tall woman with short blonde hair. "I thought the Varaxian was going to demand we dismantle the laser arrays." Captain Wright placed the approval cube in a small holder on his command chair. "They can only enforce the rules as written, and we followed every single one of them." "Technically," added Maria with a smile. Wright turned to his communications officer, a young man named Ryan Collins. "Send word to Admiral Moore. We're cleared for our shakedown cruise." As the Maverick moved away from Earth's orbit, Captain Wright called the crew to attention through the ship's communication system. "This is your captain speaking. You all know why we're here. The Confederation thinks they can keep humanity contained with their rules and regulations. They think they can limit our growth while the elder species maintain their advantage. But what they don't understand is that humans don't just follow rules. We find ways to work with them." He paused, looking around at his bridge crew. "Some of you might be nervous about what we're doing. I understand that. But remember, we're not breaking any rules. It's just creative compliance." The ship moved deeper into space, heading toward the neutral Epsilon sector for its first real test. In the engine room, Maria watched her experimental gravitational fold drive with pride. The Confederation hadn't forbidden this technology. They didn't even know it existed yet. The drive allowed the Maverick to fold space in ways that defied conventional travel. It could cover distances faster than normal ships and move in ways that made it nearly impossible to track. "Engine room to bridge," Maria said into her communicator. "Fold drive is ready for testing whenever you are, Captain." On the bridge, Wright smiled. "Prepare for fold jump. Let's show the galaxy what this ship can do." The stars outside the viewports seemed to stretch and bend as the U.S. Maverick activated its new drive. In an instant, the ship was gone, leaving nothing but empty space where it had been just a moment before. The real test of the Maverick had begun. The alarm blared throughout the U.S. Maverick, pulling Captain Wright from his sleep. He rushed to the bridge, still fastening his uniform. "Report," he ordered as he took his seat. First Officer Samantha Lewis turned from her console. "We've received a distress call from Proxima IV, sir, the human mining colony near the Varaxian border." "Show me," Wright said. A holographic display appeared in the center of the bridge. On it, a man with a dirty face and panicked eyes spoke quickly. "This is Colony Manager Frank Russell, On Proxima IV, 3 Varaxian dreadnoughts have entered our system. They claim we've crossed into their territory. We've tried to explain that we're within the agreed boundaries, but they're not listening. We need immediate assistance. The message ended with static. The bridge crew looked at each other with concern. Where are we? Wright asked. We just completed our fold jump to the Epsilon sector. Ryan Collins answered from the communication station. We're the only Earth vessel within response range. Wright studied the tactical display. The colony was home to over 2,000 human miners and their families. The 3 Varaxian dreadnoughts were massive warships, each one larger than anything Earth was allowed to build. We can't engage 3 dreadnoughts, warned Samantha, her voice low. Even with our modifications. Wright's fingers tapped on his armrest as he thought. Then a slow smile spread across his face. We're not going to engage them. We're going to confuse them. He pressed a button on his chair. Dr. Gonzalez to the bridge immediately. When Maria arrived, Wright explained his plan. Her eyes widened, then she nodded. It could work. The separation systems haven't been fully tested, but they should function. Should? Samantha asked. Will, Maria corrected with confidence. Wright stood up, addressing the entire bridge crew. I need everyone at their best. What we're about to do has never been attempted before. If we succeed, we save thousands of lives. If we fail, he didn't need to finish the sentence. The Maverick emerged from its fold jump near Proxima IV. The 3 Varaxian dreadnoughts hung in space above the small mining colony, their weapons charged and ready. Open a channel to the Varaxian fleet, Wright ordered. A reptilian face appeared on the screen. Human vessel, this does not concern you. This colony has violated our territorial agreements. Leave now or be destroyed with them. I'm afraid I can't do that, Wright replied calmly. These colonists are under Earth protection and are within the agreed boundaries. The Varaxian commander hissed. 1 small ship against 3 dreadnoughts. Your bravery is foolish. The communication ended. Wright looked at Maria. Now. She nodded and pressed a sequence of buttons on her console. Initiating separation sequence. The U.S. Maverick shuddered. Seams appeared along its hull. With a series of mechanical sounds, the ship split into 5 separate sections, each one detaching smoothly from the others. On the Varaxian flagship, the commander stared in disbelief at his tactical display. What is this trickery? 1 ship cannot become 5. But it had. The 5 sections of the Maverick moved independently, surrounding the Varaxian ships from different angles. Each section maintained communication with the others through a quantum-entangled network that allowed them to coordinate with no delay. All sections execute Maneuver Delta, Wright commanded from the central section that contained the bridge. The 5 sections began a complex dance around the Varaxian ships, moving in ways that defied normal space travel thanks to their small-scale fold drives. They appeared and disappeared, jumped from one location to another, and created sensor ghosts that made it impossible for the Varaxians to get a lock on any of them. The Varaxian ships fired their weapons, but hit nothing but empty space. Meanwhile, small Earth shuttles slipped past the confused Varaxians, evacuating the colonists from the surface. Evacuation 80% complete, Ryan reported. The Varaxians haven't noticed the shuttles yet. Wright nodded. Keep them distracted for just a little longer. On the Varaxian flagship, chaos reigned. The humans are using technology we've never seen before, an officer shouted. We cannot track them. The commander slammed his fist on his chair. Impossible. Human ships are primitive. But the evidence before his eyes told a different story. Admiral Lisa Moore stared at the video playing on her screen. It showed the U.S. Maverick splitting into 5 parts and dancing around the Varaxian dreadnoughts. She paused the video and looked up at the man standing on the other side of her desk. How did this footage leak? She asked, her voice quiet but sharp. We don't know yet. Captain Wright looked at the faces of his crew gathered in the Maverick's secure briefing room. They had been hiding in deep space for 3 days, waiting for new orders from Earth. The mood was tense. "The Confederation has officially banned our ship," Wright announced. "Any vessel with our capabilities is now illegal under their laws. So we're to return home for decommissioning?" asked Samantha Lewis, her voice tight with disappointment. "Those are our official orders," Wright replied carefully. He looked around the room, then pressed a button that activated the ship's security protocol. A soft hum filled the air as all recording devices shut down. "But there's something you all need to see first." Maria Gonzalez connected her tablet to the room's main display. "While we were near the Voraxian ships, our systems captured and decoded some of their communications. The screen showed lines of alien text with human translations below." Ryan Collins stood up and pointed to specific sections. These messages weren't just between the Voraxian ships. They were communicating with representatives from the Arachnids and Neptulians. This was a coordinated operation. "But why?" asked one of the junior officers. "What were they really doing at Proxima IV?" "Testing us," Maria replied. "Or rather, testing how we would respond. Look at this message here." She highlighted a line of text. "They expected a standard Earth military vessel. They wanted to see how we would handle being outnumbered." Ryan nodded. "And this message shows their real concern. It's not just about territory. They're afraid of us. Not because of what we've done," Wright added, "but because of how quickly we adapt, how fast we learn." The room was silent as the crew processed this information. Then Samantha spoke up. "There's more to it, isn't there?" Maria pulled up additional files. "I cross-referenced these communications with older data we've collected. The elder species, the Voraxians, Arachnids, and Neptulians, have been manipulating Confederation regulations for decades." The screen showed a timeline of regulation changes, each one targeting emerging species that showed rapid technological growth. "We're not the first," Ryan explained. "They've done this to at least 7 other species. Create rules that seem fair on the surface, but actually keep younger civilizations from ever catching up to them." Captain Wright let this sink in. Then he stood up and faced his crew. "We have a decision to make. Our orders are to return to Earth for decommissioning. But now we know the truth about what's happening." "What are our options?" asked Samantha. "We could follow orders," Wright said. "Go home, let them take apart our ship, and trust our leaders to handle this through diplomatic channels." No one spoke, but the looks on their faces made their opinions clear. "Or," Wright continued, "we could gather more evidence. Prove beyond doubt what the elder species are doing, not just to us, but to all younger civilizations in the Confederation." "That would mean disobeying direct orders," Samantha pointed out. "We'd be classified as rogue." Wright nodded. "I won't force anyone to make that choice. If you want to follow our original orders, I'll arrange transport back to Earth at our next stop. No questions asked, no marks on your record." One by one, the crew members looked at each other. Then, without a word, they all remained seated. No one moved to leave. A small smile formed on Wright's face. "Navigation. Plot a course to Epsilon Eridani. There's a small trading outpost there where we can gather supplies and information without attracting attention." As the meeting ended and the crew returned to their stations, Wright held back Samantha, Maria, and Ryan. "We need to be prepared," he told them quietly. "Once Earth realizes we're not coming back, they'll have to disavow us publicly. And the Confederation will send ships after us," added Ryan. "Not just ships," Maria said grimly. "If what we've discovered is true, they'll send everything they have." Wright's expression was determined. "Then we better make sure we find proof that's worth the risk." Little did they know that a Confederation Black Ops team was already preparing to intercept them, with orders to capture the Maverick and eliminate its crew. News of the USM Maverick spread across human colonies like wildfire. People gathered around screens in homes, bars, and public squares to watch as Confederation representatives formally censured Earth. The ship and its design concepts are hereby banned under Article 17 of the Confederation Security Protocols, announced the Neptulian High Chancellor, his blue face filling screens across the galaxy. Earth must surrender the vessel and all associated technological data immediately. On Earth, in the crowded meeting room of the United Earth Defense Council, Admiral Lisa Moore watched the broadcast with a carefully neutral expression. When it ended, she turned to face the assembled military and political leaders. "The Maverick has gone silent," she reported. "We've had no communication from Captain Wright since he acknowledged our order to return for decommissioning." "Has he gone rogue?" asked General Paul Jackson, his bushy eyebrows furrowed with concern. "We don't know," Admiral Moore replied. "But given what they discovered about the elder species' manipulation of Confederation regulations, it's possible." Earth's president, a stern woman named Helen Ward, spoke up. "Publicly, we must comply with the Confederation's demands. We cannot afford an open conflict with the elder species." Admiral Moore nodded. "Of course, Madam President. We've already issued statements condemning Captain Wright's actions and promising to decommission any similar technology." "And privately?" asked Defense Minister Alan Burke. A small smile appeared on Admiral Moore's face. "Privately, we've already begun adapting the Maverick's designs for our next generation of ships. If one vessel caused such panic among the elder species, imagine what a fleet could do." The meeting continued late into the night as Earth's leaders planned their strategy. They would appear to comply while secretly preparing for the day when humans would no longer accept being held back. Meanwhile, the Maverick had gone silent, its quantum signature masked as it traveled through the rarely used passages of the Oort corridor. This ancient trade route had been abandoned centuries ago when faster methods of travel became common. Now it provided the perfect cover for a ship trying to avoid detection. On the bridge, Samantha Lewis monitored the long-range sensors. "Another patrol," she reported. "Arachnid scout ship, following the same search pattern as the others. They're hunting us systematically," Captain Wright observed. "Sector by sector. They're hunting us like criminals," Samantha said bitterly. "No," Captain Wright corrected her. "They're hunting us like they're afraid." In the engine room, Maria Gonzalez worked tirelessly to improve their stealth systems. The fold drive that allowed them to jump through space also generated a unique energy signature that could be tracked by sophisticated sensors. She had to find a way to mask it completely. Ryan Collins spent his time in the communications center, intercepting and decoding messages between Confederation ships. The more they learned, the clearer the picture became. The elder species had been manipulating the development of younger civilizations for thousands of years. "It's not just about military technology," he explained during a meeting with the senior officers. "They control the flow of scientific knowledge, limit trade of certain materials, even influence cultural exchange to keep younger species dependent on them." "But why?" asked Maria. "What are they so afraid of?" "Change," Wright said simply. "They've been in power for so long, they can't imagine a galaxy where they don't control everything." As the Maverick continued its journey, the crew's resolve strengthened. They weren't just fighting for Earth anymore. They were fighting for all the species that had been held back, manipulated, and controlled. After 2 weeks of careful travel, they reached their destination, a small, uninhabited system near the edge of Confederation space. According to the data they had gathered, this system contained an abandoned research station that had once belonged to the crystallines, a species that had mysteriously vanished 300 years ago. "Sensors show no active technology," Samantha reported as they approached the station. "It appears to be completely dormant." "Perfect," Wright said. "Prepare a boarding team." If the crystallines were as advanced as the records suggest, they might have left behind information that could help us. What the crew of the Maverick didn't know was that they were not alone in this forgotten corner of space. Something had been waiting here, dormant but aware, for someone brave enough to seek the truth. Captain Wright led the boarding team onto the abandoned crystalline station. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing walls made of a strange, shimmering material that seemed to glow faintly when the light touched it. "This technology is unlike anything I've ever seen," Maria whispered, running her scanner over the walls. "These materials aren't in any Confederation database." They moved deeper into the station, following corridors that curved in strange patterns. The air was still breathable, maintained by systems that had continued to function for centuries without maintenance. In what appeared to be the central chamber, they found something unexpected: a large crystal, pulsing with soft blue light. "It's active," Maria said, checking her scanner. "And it's putting out energy patterns similar to our quantum communication systems, but far more advanced." As they approached the crystal, the light pulsed faster. Suddenly, a beam shot out from it, scanning each of them from head to toe. Then, a voice filled the chamber, speaking in perfect English. "Humans, you have finally come." The boarding team froze in surprise. "I am Vox, a consciousness preservation unit of the Crystalline Coalition. I have waited for a species brave enough to defy the elder races." "What happened to your people?" Wright asked. "We advanced too quickly. The elder species feared us, just as they now fear you. When they could not contain us with their rules, they took more direct action." A holographic display appeared, showing images of a war that had happened centuries ago. The crystallines had been systematically eliminated. But some of us anticipated this. We left consciousness units like me throughout the galaxy, waiting for allies who might one day challenge the elder species' dominance. Back on the Maverick, Samantha's voice came urgently through Wright's communicator. "Captain, we've detected ships entering the system. Confederation signatures. A lot of them." Wright turned to Vox. "We don't have much time. The elder species are hunting us too." "I have been monitoring their communications," Vox replied. "They fear your ship's capabilities greatly. But what terrifies them more is what might happen if other younger species learn of their deception. We've gathered evidence, but we need more proof to convince the galaxy," Wright explained. "I can provide that proof," Vox said. "For millennia, the elder species have suppressed technological development across the galaxy. They have hidden the true history of countless civilizations that came before. I have preserved these records." Vox transferred massive amounts of data to Maria's tablet, evidence of the elder species systematically holding back technological development for thousands of years. "This is exactly what we needed," Maria said, her eyes wide as she scrolled through the files. Captain Wright made a decision. "We're not running anymore. Ryan, prepare to broadcast on all Confederation channels. We're going to show everyone the truth." Back on the Maverick, they prepared the most important transmission in human history. As Confederation ships surrounded them, they began broadcasting the evidence, not just to Earth, but to every species in the galaxy. "This is Captain Daniel Wright of the U.S. Maverick. What we are about to show you will change everything you believe about the Galactic Confederation and the elder species who control it." The response was immediate and chaotic. Across the galaxy, younger species who had long suspected they were being held back now had proof. They began demanding reforms, threatening to leave the Confederation unless changes were made. The elder species tried to dismiss the evidence as human propaganda, but Vox had included authentication codes that could not be denied. The carefully maintained structure of power that had stood for thousands of years began to crumble. 6 months later, Captain Wright stood before the newly formed Galactic Council that had replaced the old Confederation. Representatives from all species, old and new, now had equal votes in galactic affairs. The Maverick was banned. He addressed the diverse assembly, because it represented something the old order couldn't control: innovation. But trying to ban innovation is like trying to ban evolution itself. The U.S. Maverick now hung in a museum orbit around Earth, decommissioned but not dismantled, a reminder that sometimes breaking the rules doesn't just change the game. It changes the galaxy. As for the elder species, they remained powerful but no longer dominated. The crystallines began to return, their consciousness units awakening across the stars, bringing with them knowledge long suppressed. And humanity. They continued to do what they had always done best: adapt, innovate, and push boundaries. Not alone anymore, but alongside new allies who valued these qualities rather than feared them.